Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Hamid. The de facto authorities in Afghanistan, the Afghan Taliban, had been ruling the war-ravaged country from last 3 years, since 15th of August 2021. And now their army chief has made a claim that the promise that they made to the international community that no country would be attacked from Afghanistan, they are sticking to it. We'll be taking the analysis. What is the truth or any sort of a weight associated with this particular claim? The de facto authorities, army chief, has also at the same time denied the presence of banned Taliban Pakistan, Fitna al-Khawarij in Afghanistan, also saying that Pakistan has not yet provided any sort of evidence regarding the presence of banned Taliban Pakistan in Afghanistan and perpetrating the heinous terrorist attacks using the Afghan soil. Interestingly and surprisingly, there have been a number of occasions that Pakistani authorities with irrefutable evidence had been telling the Afghan authorities that how, when and where from the banned Taliban Pakistan, the Fitna al-Khawarij had been perpetrating heinous terrorist attacks inside Pakistan using Afghan soil. Not only this, there are also multiple United Nations reports which point to this particular fact. The kind of presence banned Taliban Pakistan has got in Afghanistan, being the largest terrorist group operating from the Afghan soil, and also the kind of facilities, kind of support it is enjoying, especially from other militant outfits, the terrorist groups, also the kind of support it is getting from the de facto authorities, the Afghan Taliban. Also, in a major development, we have seen Pakistan's Interior Minister, Mr. Mohsin Naqvi, has informed the UN Special Representative for Afghanistan about the presence of banned Taliban Pakistan, Fitna al-Khawarij in Afghanistan, how they are perpetrating heinous terrorist attacks here in Pakistan using the Afghan soil. And he has also urged the United Nations to help stop this particular activity that is being done by banned Taliban Pakistan using the Afghan soil. We also know for a fact that today Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif visited Quetta, and he has also vowed to eradicate terrorism from the country. We'll be taking the analysis regarding as to these particular statements which have come forth by the army chief of the de facto authorities in Afghanistan, and the kind of the facts which relate to the presence of different militant outfits and terrorist outfits operating from Afghanistan. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Khalid Taimur Akram, expert in international relations. Mr. Akram, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show. Mr. Akram, what is the intention, do you think, is behind this particular claim by the de facto authorities, army chief, that they are sticking to the promise they made to the international community, and also saying that banned Taliban Pakistan is not present in Afghanistan, and Pakistan shouldn't be blaming the Afghan de facto authorities for its weaknesses? While it's not only Pakistani authorities which have been giving them irrefutable evidence, there are multiple United Nations reports which point to the fact, and it gives the exact number of the strength of the Fitna al-Khawarij militants present there.
Yes, we have seen that ever since the Taliban Afghanistan, they have come in power in Afghanistan. They have been making several promises with Pakistan initially also, and then later on also, that their soil will not be used against against Pakistan. But we have seen number of attacks happening in Pakistan, and interestingly, all these attacks happening in Pakistan by these terrorists have the weapons which were left behind by NATO. They were all the NATO-grade weapons and the US weapons which are being used. Unfortunately, I must say this thing, that the Afghan government, the present Afghan government, has not been able to even take a stock of those weapons which were left behind for their military. And they are now in the hands of these terrorists. And secondly, we observe that although they are making this claim, but look at the history of last 3 years. We have a very long border with Afghanistan. Initially, we saw that these terrorists, they have been cutting the wire along the border. There are lots of videos on the social media. And then the Afghan government used to say that the warlords on the border areas are not in their control. So practically speaking, the Afghan government is only restricted to Kabul and Kandahar. Outside these two cities, they do not have that kind of control which a national government should have. And also, we have been seeing lots of infiltration, lots of attacks, direct attacks from the Afghan territory on our security forces. So they do not have any kind of replies to these things. And Pakistan government have been repeatedly sending delegations over there, and we have been handing over the evidences. Recently, we have handed them over the evidence that about those terrorists who had attacked Chinese convoy in Dasu. So all these evidences are not only known to them, but also to the international community. So I think that these statements are just mere statements. The Afghan government has to wake up, and they have to control their own territory first, and then they should start this blame game or any other thing.
So to what purpose do you think such type of statements are being released, this pattern of denial continuously on the part of the Afghan Taliban?
Yes. One, because they have a similar pattern of denial since last 3 years. The reason is this, that they do not have the control over complete Afghanistan. As I said, presently the Afghan government is only restricted to the bigger cities. So they don't have control over the border areas. They do not have control over various provinces. And unfortunately, this terrorist organizations are not only have their headquarters over there, but they are getting training over there. They are being launched from there. The weaponry, I fail to understand this thing that 3 years have passed. Up till now, in last 3 years, the Afghan government has not been able to take a stock of the weapons which were with the Afghan National Army. And let me also tell here that it's a very strange thing that on 15th August 2021, once the Afghan Taliban took power, their complete army ran away. It's a really strange thing. I don't think that this kind of thing has happened anywhere in the history, that on the morning of 16th.
And that alludes to the fact that was a very hasty withdrawal. The Afghan National Security Forces, if I exactly remember the number of Afghan National Security Forces at that time, which had been trained for 2 decades by the international troops, it was 300,000.
Yes.
And there was not even a tint of resistance when the presidential palace was being taken over by the Afghan Taliban.
But my point is this, that the hasty withdrawal was by the NATO. The Afghan National Forces were not withdrawing to Europe. They had to be there. It was their country. It was their duty to protect. It was just, for them, it was a change of government happening. But on 16th of August, we saw that all of a sudden, the complete 300,000 strong military, it vanished. And the weapons, all the equipment and everything, it was eventually with the terrorists. Whether it is ISKP, whether it is TTP, whether there are other organizations, all of them, they had those weapons. And Pakistan had been giving lots of evidences. The initial attacks happened in Banu, I remember, in 2022. Pakistan, our security forces even showed those weapons and those bulletproof jackets and all those things which were taken away from Afghanistan. So these are the hard facts. But
now, with these weapons, Mr. Akram, in the hands of the terrorists, and Afghan Taliban not taking stock of the availability of these NATO caliber weapons at the hands of the terrorists, what is the way forward? I'll come back to you for your detailed understanding regarding that. Mr. Akram, eradicating or dealing with extremist mindset, your understanding regarding that, what steps are required for that?
Yeah, first of all, as the professor is right, that it's not only religious madrasas that we have to see around us. We need to revise our curriculum. We need to have a strong de-radicalization movement. We need to educate our teachers. We need to train the teachers that what they should be telling it to the students. we should have a national narrative. We should be making, it's not only to deal with the terrorism, we have to stop the future youth for going towards this direction. We have to have a national narrative. We have to get out of this ethnic mindset that who's Balochi, who's Sindhi, who's Pathan, who's Punjabi. We all are Pakistanis, and we need to tell this to our future generation. There's a lot of disappointment in the youth, and most of this disappointment is spread through the social media. We have
through disinformation.
Through the disinformation, we have seen very recently the army chief has been telling to the students that we need to watch for what we are seeing on the social media. It's not that anywhere you go in the world, you go in China, you go in Central Asia, you go everywhere in the world, it's the state's responsibility to train their people, to protect their people from this cyber terrorism. I think Pakistan government has taken the right steps and to counter this cyber terrorism, because the educated youth is getting influenced from the social media, and we need to not only keep a track of that, but we need to highlight this in front of Google, in front of all the social media apps, and we must tell them that what kind of hatred is being spread in Pakistan.
Okay, so one very important point, going back to the same statement that has been made by Defecto authorities, Army Chief, denying the presence of banned Taliban Pakistan in Afghanistan. Just a couple of days before, we saw a statement by the spokesman of the Defecto authorities, Zabiullah Mujahid. He also denied the presence of TTP there, but at the same time, he said that the Afghan authorities are ready for the mediation between banned TTP and the Pakistani authorities. You've seen for a fact that Pakistani authorities have been very clear about not having any sort of negotiations with banned Taliban Pakistan unless they completely surrender to the writ of the state. And until that, it has been declared as an absolute red line. So the question is, if they are denying the presence of TTP on the Afghan soil, how can they work as a mediator between TTP and the Pakistani authorities?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. One, as we know that TTP and all the terrorist groups, like even BLA, now it has its presence in Afghanistan. All of them are present in Afghanistan. It cannot be denied. Whatever the Afghan government are giving statements, it's just for the media consumption. It is just for telling the world that they are being very judicious and they are being the Afghan soil is not being used. I think the complete world knows this thing, that the Afghan soil is not in their control, and at the same time they are offering to mediate. Now why they are offering to mediate is, one of the reasons is that TTA, the Afghan Taliban Afghanistan, they think that all these forces, all these negative forces have helped them against NATO and US forces in Afghanistan. But if they were getting their help, that's their problem. That's not our problem. We never asked them to take their help. We never supported this kind of terrorism, even in Hamid Karzai's time, even in Ashraf Ghani's time. So Pakistan's stance in last 20 years has been very, very clear on terrorism. We are probably the only country in the world who has rooted out the terrorism without any foreign help. And so if they were taking their help, or if they are close to each other, it's not our problem. Our problem right now is this, that Afghan soil is used against Pakistan. All these people are getting in from Afghanistan to Pakistan. They are using those weapons, the NATO grade standard weapons and the American standard weapons. I don't call them NATO weapons, I call them the Afghan National Army weapons, because all those weapons were being used by Afghan National Army for the last 20 years.
So wasn't there any responsibility on the US while withdrawing to take those weapons back, or just leave them at the hands of the Afghan National Security Forces, and they couldn't have that capability to, control them and let them go in the hands of the terrorists?
I think the US had handed those weapons to the Afghan National Army. I think US was also not expecting the complete 300,000 army will run away in one night. and probably they had not planned the withdrawal in a way that they would take the weapons back from the Afghan National Army, because those weapons were practically speaking, they were given to Afghan National Army and they were using it. So I don't think that US and NATO forces had the plans to take those weapons back. But now here comes that who trained that army? That army was trained by the NATO forces. That army was trained by the US forces.
Naturally, this is the question as to the kind of training that was imparted.
That got. This is quite a surprise, and I had been trying to get this answer, and what answer I got was because that army was never trained for protecting a country. They were just given money, and they were just like they were toy soldiers. They were not. They did not had any kind of motivation level. They did not had any kind of nationalism in them, because all of them, they were working like toy soldiers only for money. And the moment they saw US going away, NATO going away, everybody ran away.
Got your point. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.